Hi guys, how are you? Hope you're doing great. Welcome to my couch. I don't think I've ever filmed a video sitting right here, so this is just something new. Today I'd like to talk about some recent reads, and I have been reading a lot in the past couple of weeks, and I don't really want to wait till the end of the month because if I continue to read at this pace, it's going to be too many for one video. So I might make this a habit depending on my pace of reading, but here's a recent reads video. Yeah. So I have to flip this upside down in order to do it in chronological order, so I'm gonna try and do this quickly, but yeah, these are the books that I read. So everybody should grab their beverage of choice. Mine this evening is some nice wine that I'm gonna need to top off in order to get through this. Today we have a nice screw-off cap of Cabernet from Aldi, just really classy. And we're gonna talk about some recent reads. The first book that I'm going to talk about is Imaginary Friend by Stephen Chbosky. And this is a horror story. It is quite a lengthy, very intricate horror story about a young boy who goes missing in the woods for 6 days, and when he comes back, he has an imaginary friend. This basically unlocks for him another dimension where the imaginary world exists alongside what we know as reality. There are many characters and individuals who interact with this kid, whose name is Christopher, and they are all being influenced by this imaginary world. Christopher is playing a large part in the existence of this imaginary world, which is essentially the main plotline of this book. This book is equally thrilling and suspenseful as it is graphic and gory. It was a really, really great marriage of both of those elements of horror that I enjoy. I found this horror story to be exceptional, above average of what I would normally read. I haven't read horror like this in a long time. It absolutely gripped me within the first 50 pages. Like, you get right into it. Like, there is no buffer. There's not a lot of like setup and build up. You go straight into the action, and it is so good. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time, and if you are looking for a lengthy, and by lengthy I mean 700 pages, I recommend this one. There is camaraderie between friendships. There's an exploration of motherhood and what it's like to be a protective parent, what it's like to be a single parent. There was just a lot of good elements in this book that made the risk so high stake, and I was totally invested. I cared very much about Christopher and what happened to him and his family and his friends. So I really enjoyed this book, and I gave it 4 stars. The next book I would like to talk about is Behind Her Eyes by Sarah Pinsborough, and this book might be more well known for its Netflix adaptation, which I was encouraged to watch by my dad, and I wanted to read the book first, so I went ahead and picked this up. It had been on my TBR for a while, even before the Netflix adaptation came out, so this is a thriller and suspense book about our main character, Louise, as she explores relationships with her boss, David, as well as his wife, Adele. She and Adele kind of stumble into each other on accident and end up really hitting it off and getting each other's numbers. And essentially, something kind of like happens and goes down where you can really get a sinister vibe. David does not know that they are hanging out and friends. Adele has made it pretty clear that she does not want Louise to tell him, and Louise is getting a little bit more and more concerned for Adele's relationship with her husband, possible abuse, and stuff like that. So she's just trying to look out for her friend. This is a suspense, it's a thriller, it has a massive twist at the end. Y'all, I literally binged this book so fast. I think I read this in less than 24 hours. It was so good. It gripped me from the beginning. Adele, whew, is she spooky. So I can't really say too much about that Netflix adaptation because I never watched it. After reading the book and I found out the twist, I was like, yes, I have my fill, check, done. Not really too interested in watching the TV show, sorry Dad. But yes, I gave 4 stars to Behind Her Eyes because it was extremely gripping. You get to see 2 perspectives, one from Louise and one from the wife, Adele, and they are compelling and persuasive, and it was a good like mind bender. So if that sounds like something you are interested in, I would recommend Behind Her Eyes. Or if you don't want to read the book, go and watch the TV show and tell me how it is. The next book I would like to talk about is Legend Born by Tracy Deonn. This is a fantasy story about our main character, Bree, And it starts off with Bree's mother dying in a car accident, which was very tragic and really hard for Bree and her father. One of the last conversations Bree had with her mom was telling her that she was attending this college, the same college in North Carolina that her mom ended up attending as well. Her mom and her butt heads on a lot of issues, including where she's going to college. She applied with her best friend, Alice, and they end up rooming together at this college. However, once they begin their semester, Alice and Bree go to a rock quarry party, and Bree ends up witnessing a demon attack, which opens up her eyes to this other world of magic and demons and demon hunting. This opens her eyes to a lot of other possibilities of what could have happened to her mom, and she adopts the help of a man called Nick, who is also in this order. And it's essentially this kind of secret society, university feel that I really love in a book. I really enjoyed Catherine House for that reason. And Nick and her essentially make a pact to come together, and he's gonna help her figure out what truly happened to her mom. Huge journey, big twists and turns. There is so much world building. Tracy Deonn did exceptional. I didn't really feel totally gripped by the story. I ended up giving this book 3 stars, and it's definitely of personal preference. There's a couple of tropes in here that are a personal preference that I don't really love to read about. However, even despite that, Tracy Deonn just took me on an absolute ride. There's a big competition and a lot of crazy monsters that they have to kill, and so if that sounds like something that's up your alley, I would definitely recommend Legendborn. It is very, very good. However, I will say just a couple of things that weren't really up my alley and didn't grip me in a way that some other stories have, so I gave this 3 stars. The next book I read was All the Tides of Fate by Adeline Grace, which is a YA fantasy story about our main character, Amora Montara. This is the second book to the All the Stars and Teeth duology, which follows the first book, All the Stars and Teeth. This book follows Amora and her friends as they attempt to navigate a lost magic and try and recover her magic and break a bond between 2 individuals who were cursed together. Lots of traveling, lots of setting changes that I really appreciated. I also really enjoyed the first book. I gave the first book a 4-star, and I gave this book a 4-star as well. Amora Montara is now queen of this kingdom, and it is on the brink of destruction. There is a lot of superstition that are pulling people apart, a lot of competitiveness regarding the different styles of magic, and just some very high stakes in this book. It was great. It wasn't amazing. It didn't blow my mind, but I really enjoyed myself while reading, so 4 stars. The next book I read is a poetry collection called How I Discovered Poetry by Marilyn Nelson, and this is the first poetry collection I have read in a very long time. I think the first of my adult life. And this book is kind of biographical. It follows her when she's a young child, and essentially she's given credit to her sister in the acknowledgements, where she's basically like, thank you to my sister for helping me remember some of these details. So I think it was definitely like a reflection of her childhood and her experiences when moving around. Her father was in the Navy, Army, military. He served in the US forces. And so she had to change cities a lot. She touches on the Red Scare and also the effects of racism, even from a very, very young age. It was beautiful. It was accessible. I felt like I could read it and definitely understand what she was trying to say. I am the type of person to get very intimidated by poetry because I find that possibly I'm not smart enough, or I don't know enough words. My vocabulary and grammar isn't good enough to understand what these implications and what the author's trying to get across. This book was not like that, and it just made me feel very connected. It was heartwarming, it was tough to read at times, and it was just an all-around amazing experience, and I would definitely recommend this book. I gave it 4 stars. Okay, next is a book that is maybe a little bit dangerous just to talk about because I read it relatively recently. So recently, in fact, I haven't technically given it any stars. I haven't decided what I want to rate it. I might need to think on this one a little bit. So this book is Love is a Revolution by Renee Watson, and it is a YA contemporary story about our main character, Nala, and her relationship with a boy that she tries to impress by telling a few white lies. Essentially, things go downhill, and she has to come to terms with and face kind of her inner self, and learns a lot about self-love and the love from people who truly matter and have been there for you, like family and close friends. I truly enjoyed this book. It had a really great impact on me, and it's not very often that a YA, a young adult book, has an impact like that on me. It was at the same time totally radical as well as content, and it made me feel content and held almost. It was just such an incredible book, and it gave very good vibes. I cared a lot about Nala. I wanted her to make the right decision and stop taking the easy way out, and this was one of my anticipated releases of 2021, and I will say that it was absolutely incredible and delivered on every front that I could have expected. I think I might give this 5 stars. I'm gonna give this 5 stars. It was an incredible book, and I think everybody should read it. The next book I read was a graphic novel called Pashmina by Nidhi Chinani, and this book is a story about our main character, Pashmina. And Pashmina discovers a hidden item that had been tucked away in one of their closets, and it is essentially showing her the alternative realities when an individual makes different choices. Her mom had left India, and she and her are living now in the States, and Pashmina is very interested in her mother's past and going to India, and her mom is just not having it. And so you get to see an individual who's growing up and has a lot of questions and is going through trying to find their own identity, who's reaching out to an authority figure, a mother, with questions that are very valid, and the mother has valid reasons to not want to answer those questions. So seeing the struggle between mother-daughter is very prevalent in this book, and I enjoyed it. It was beautiful story, very cute and imaginative. It was very creative. It didn't do anything for me super special or unique. It didn't bring me anything that I hadn't felt or heard of already. The author of this book, Nidhi Chinani, is also born in India and then raised here in the States in Southern California, I believe. And so she kind of gets to put possibly I assume some of her experiences of growing up in the States when you have a different background is reflected here in this story. And so for that reason, it was also a very special book. So if this sounds like something that you would be interested in, I would definitely pick it up. I gave this 3 stars. And lastly, the book that I'm going to talk about is The Project by Courtney Summers. And this book is a YA thriller, and boy oh boy, should this not be YA, y'all. I don't know the definition, I don't know the line that is drawn between young adult and adult books, but there is a lot of stuff that is mentioned in this book that I've felt is not like your typical YA. I was expecting this to be a lot more gimmicky. There wasn't like twists and turns and trying to get the reader to like, gasp, but it was just so intense in a different way. Do your research into this book before reading it. I don't have a list of trigger warnings. I can think of some off the top of my head, but I know mine will not be completely inclusive. So do your own research. As always, I say that. Please do your research before you pick up any book, but especially The Project. This book follows 2 sisters, Lo, whose name is Gloria, but they call her Lo, and B. And Lo is younger, B is older. Their parents are killed before the story starts in a car crash in which Lo is injured. B goes and seeks refuge in a religious group called the Unity Project, and Lo struggles with that. She takes issue with the fact that B is seeking relief from the grief in this way, and so Lo is essentially estranged from B because B is so immersed in this project, which as Lo grows up and gets closer to the Unity Project in a very different way than B is, she starts to begin to think that it is a cult and has some more sinister intentions towards its members, including her sister B. They do a little bit of flashback. There's a couple of changes in chronological order here, but they make it very clear. It's easy to follow. But the modern kind of timeline that they follow is Lo is now 19 and she is working for a publishing industry. She's an assistant to the kind of head guy, and she's trying to convince him that the Unity Project is a good subject matter to pursue for an article and for further research. She does not tell her boss that she has a sister who is in the project and that she has this totally ulterior motive because she hasn't spoken to her sister in years since the accident. It is a wild ride. It's good. It's one of the better cult books I've read. I didn't love it though. I found myself when reading, I don't know if this is just personal preference and it's just where I'm at as a reader, but I found myself a little bit distracted. It was harder to focus on this book, and I really can't pinpoint why. I think there were a few too many lulls in pace for me that definitely made me a little bit less focused and more disinterested in this book. And it is definitely hard to articulate because I don't want to blame the writer. So I gave 2 stars to The Project by Courtney Summers. However, I know she has another book out called Sadie, which was extremely popular a couple of years ago, and if I ever feel so inclined, Sadie feels like it might be a little bit more up my alley, so we'll see. Okay friends, well that concludes my recent reads video. I just wanted to kind of pop in, chat a little bit about some of the stuff I have picked up recently without the pressure of like, oh, here is a huge monthly wrap up. I had a great time filming it. I hope you had fun watching it. I think it was a good kind of season of reading just because I read a couple of anticipated releases, my first poetry collection in a really long time, and a great cute graphic novel. So I'm very pleased with that and the reading I have done recently, and I appreciate you tuning in. I hope you had a great time, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.